He saw a beggar at midnight, a girl whose eyes reflected the trembling light of a broken street lamp. The rain had stopped, but the earth still breathed in small clouds of mist that rose from the pavement. Her figure was a blur at first, a shadow moving between the whispering alleys, until she turned toward him and spoke with a strange defiance. "I don't need you," she said, her voice brittle but unyielding. "It was the night that called me here, not you." He didn't understand then what she meant, nor did he ask. Something in the way she held her tattered shawl close to her chest, like a secret she would never share, made him hesitate. He had not planned to stop. He was merely passing through the silent town, one of those nights when the world feels hollow and every echo belongs to someone else's sorrow. Yet there she was, a girl who seemed more like an apparition than flesh, and in the dim flicker of that streetlight, he felt the fragile weight of her existence pulling him closer. He remembered the stories his grandmother told him long ago, stories of people who appeared only when the moon was thin, when the border between the seen and unseen was barely a breath. He thought of that as he watched the girl kneel beside an overturned crate, her fingers tracing shapes on the wet ground. The letters she drew dissolved almost instantly, washed away by the last drops of rain. She didn't seem to care. Each motion carried a rhythm, a quiet insistence that spoke of both ritual and despair. He found himself whispering, "Do you have somewhere to go?" But the question hung uselessly between them. She smiled, a faint upward curve that could have meant anything. "Everyone has somewhere," she said. "But not everyone is welcome when they get there." He noticed then that she wasn't as young as she first appeared. The moonlight played tricks on faces, softening what time had hardened, but her hands told the truth, thin, veined, with the roughness of years that had not been kind. She looked at him again and he saw the faint gleam of something metallic near her wrist, a small charm or bracelet, half buried under grime. He wondered what story it carried, who had given it to her, or whether she had found it among the things the world discards when no one is watching. He wanted to ask, but his tongue felt heavy, and silence, somehow, felt more respectful. The night stretched around them like an endless corridor. Somewhere far away, a train moaned, its echo folding into the wind. He thought of home, though he wasn't sure where that was anymore. He had left too many places to claim any of them as his own. Maybe that was why he stopped when he saw her, maybe something about her aloneness mirrored his own. The girl rose slowly, as if each movement cost her a memory. She stepped toward him, her bare feet making no sound on the wet concrete. "You shouldn't be here," she murmured. "Midnight doesn't forgive those who listen too closely." "What does that mean?" he asked. She tilted her head, eyes unfocused, as if listening to something behind him. "There are things that walk with the wind," she said. "You hear them only when you've lost enough." Her words sent a tremor through him. He tried to laugh it off, but the sound died in his throat. She brushed past him, her shoulder grazing his arm, a fleeting touch, but cold as if it had come from another world. He turned, ready to follow, but she had already vanished into the shadowed mouth of an alley. He waited there for a long time, listening. The city was asleep, yet the air carried whispers, soft, rhythmic, almost like breathing. He thought of leaving, but something kept him rooted. Perhaps curiosity, perhaps guilt. He found himself walking toward the alley, his footsteps echoing in the hollow quiet. The smell of damp brick and rust surrounded him. A faint glimmer caught his eye. On the ground lay the bracelet he had seen earlier. He picked it up and turned it in his hand. The charm was shaped like a crescent moon, its surface scratched and dull, but beneath the dirt, he could see faint letters engraved along the curve. They were too small to read in the dark, so he slipped it into his pocket and continued deeper. The alley ended abruptly at a crumbling wall. There was no sign of the girl. He stood there for several minutes, unsure what to feel. When he finally stepped back onto the main street, the world felt different, emptier, quieter, as if something had been taken from the night itself. He looked up. The moon had hidden behind clouds, leaving only a thin smear of silver light. He started walking again, trying to convince himself that what he'd seen was nothing more than fatigue playing tricks on him. But when he reached the corner, he heard a faint humming, a melody that floated through the air like smoke. It was her voice. He turned quickly and saw her again, standing beneath an old lamppost, the light trembling above her. She was singing to no one, her words soft and broken, carried away by the wind before he could understand them. When she stopped, she looked straight at him and whispered, "It's not me you should pity." He approached slowly, unsure if she would vanish again. Then who? He asked. She looked down at the ground, where puddles mirrored fragments of the dim sky. The ones who still think they're alive, she said. The words stung more than he expected. He wanted to argue, to say something that would break through whatever wall she had built around herself, but her expression left no room for comfort. She turned and started walking again, her silhouette melting into the fog. He followed from a distance. The streets grew narrower, the lamps fewer. He had the uneasy feeling that the town itself was folding in on them, sealing them inside a world that existed only for this moment. They reached an abandoned square where a dry fountain stood like a forgotten monument. The girl sat on its edge, her back straight, her face lifted toward the sky. "I used to come here," she said, "when the world still remembered me." He sat beside her, unsure if she spoke to him or to the ghosts that lingered in her words. "What happened?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "I stopped asking for what I didn't deserve." He frowned. "And what did you deserve?" She looked at him then, eyes filled with a sadness too vast to name. "Less than I was given, more than I could keep." He didn't know how long they sat there. The night wrapped around them, heavy and patient. Somewhere, a bell tolled once, midnight's echo stretching into eternity. The sound seemed to awaken something in her. She stood abruptly and faced him. "It's starting again," she whispered. "What is?" She didn't answer. Instead, she extended her hand, and he saw that it trembled slightly. Against all reason, he took it. Her skin was cold but steady. She led him toward the far side of the square, where the shadows thickened like ink. The air grew colder with each step. Then, just as he was about to speak, a figure emerged from the darkness, a man in a long coat, his face hidden by the brim of a hat. The girl stopped. The man spoke in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You shouldn't have brought him." The girl lowered her head. "He saw me," she said. "He heard the song." The man sighed. "Then he must follow." The stranger turned toward him, and for a brief moment, their eyes met. What he saw there was not malice but inevitability. "You wanted to understand," the man said. "Now you will." Before he could respond, the world around him shifted. The street, the fountain, the fog, all dissolved into a swirl of silver light. He felt himself falling, or perhaps rising, through layers of time and memory. When the motion stopped, he stood once more in the same square, but it was no longer abandoned. It was alive with music, laughter, and the scent of bread from nearby stalls. The fountain flowed, clear and bright. Children ran past him, their laughter echoing like bells. He turned, searching for the girl, and saw her standing at the center of it all, radiant, her rags replaced by a simple white dress. She looked younger, her eyes full of light. People passed her without noticing, as if she were invisible. He moved closer. "Is this the past?" he asked. She smiled. "This is the world before forgetting." He watched as she knelt by the fountain and offered bread to a child. Her movements were tender, unhurried. He wanted to speak, to tell her that she would be remembered, that she mattered, but before he could, the scene began to fade. The laughter dimmed, the light drained from the air. He found himself once more in the empty square, the fountain dry and cracked. She stood before him, the white dress replaced by the torn shawl. "Why show me that?" he asked. "Because you needed to know," she said. "You see what happens to kindness when the world looks away." He shook his head. "You're not real." She laughed softly. "Neither are most of the things you believe in." He wanted to deny it, but her presence felt more real than anything he had known. He looked down at his hand and saw the moon-shaped charm glowing faintly through the fabric of his pocket. He took it out and held it toward her. "This is yours." She shook her head. "It was. Now it's yours." The charm pulsed once, like a heartbeat, and the air grew still. "What am I supposed to do with it?" he asked. "Remember," she said simply. "Remember what the night gives and what it takes." Her form began to dissolve, threads of light unraveling into the mist. "Wait," he called. "What's your name?" Her voice came as a whisper from everywhere and nowhere. "Names are for those who stay." And then she was gone. He stood there until the first gray of dawn touched the edges of the world. The town stirred awake, indifferent to the secrets that had passed through its streets. He walked toward the station, the charm warm in his hand. The people he passed didn't seem to see him, or maybe he had simply become another shadow among many. As he boarded the train, he looked back once. The square was empty again, but for a moment he thought he saw her shape reflected in the glass, smiling, distant, free. The train moved, carrying him away from the place where night had revealed its quiet mercy. He sat by the window, turning the charm in his fingers, tracing the faint letters until they finally came into focus. They spelled a single word: hope. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, he felt the world breathe with him. He never spoke of the encounter again, yet the memory stayed, sometimes in dreams, sometimes in the pauses between heartbeats. Whenever he passed a beggar on the street or heard a song sung softly at midnight, something in him would stir. He would reach into his pocket, touch the charm, and remember the girl who had said she didn't need him, though perhaps she had meant something else entirely. Maybe she had been reminding him that no one truly saves another, we only remind them of what still lives inside. And in that remembrance, even the forgotten can return to light.